Shalom. This is Rabbi Menashe East sharing your word of Torah with you from the Mount Freedom Jewish Center in Randolph, New Jersey, in honor of Parshat Vayera. Parshat Vayera begins with the famous event where Avraham is recovering from his circumcision, his Brit Milah, and in his tent, and God appears to him to, as the rabbis say, to visit the sick and help Abraham in his recovery process. And then as Abraham and God are sitting together, there then comes the three strangers, the angels, walking through the desert, and Abraham notices them from afar and jumps up to welcome these guests who are wandering through the desert, who may have needed help at that moment. He was being machnis orchim, he was being gracious and welcoming the strangers into his home. And in that moment, the Talmud points out that this is appropriate, that Abraham pushed aside a sense. He stepped away from God, which you'd think is almost inappropriate, but that it was appropriate that Abraham stepped away from God in order to greet the three guests. And that story is important for me today, in particular, as we've been on a journey dealing with the effects on communal life that COVID has wrought. And for me, when there is a exigency and there's an important need, we step away from God. We step away from, in a sense, we move out of the sacred space, and our communities have done that in many ways. We've tried to step away for the sake of other people, for the sake of being, to be, if in some way being with God is a threat, puts other people in danger, then we try to emphasize people. That's the story of Avraham. Avraham stepped away from God in order to help people who he thought were in need. And so that's what we're doing. We're on this process, and we started that way, walking away, stepping away for the sake of safety. But of course, the challenge becomes coming back. And we see that Avraham models that for us too. Because just after Abraham has this encounter with his three guests and he discusses with them, he finds out their true purpose and who they really were. He finds out that one of those angels has a mission to wipe out the city of Sodom and Amorah. And Abraham, as the guests leave his home, stands up to confront God and to re-engage God. So in that moment, when he had been at the stage of stepping away from, he then also, the next moment, when it's time, he re-engages, and then he re-engages in a powerful way. And God is wondering, even in that text, God speaks to himself, as it were, should I hide what I'm about to do from Avraham? He's going to be the forefather of the generations. It's in his hands what's going to come into the future, of how he's going to teach his children about ethics and monotheism. And so God, in a sense, re-engages Abraham in a more powerful way than what had been prior to that point. And so we have this moment where it's at once the stepping away from out of necessity because of the momentary need and the need for self-care and care for a community and fellow man. And then there's the re-engagement. So that's what we have to be mindful of. Where are we at in the process of re-engagement? It's a question we're dealing with here in our community. We're trying to do this as safely and responsibly and meaningfully as possible, because we know there's a lot at stake nowadays. And our communities need to be safe, protect each other, and then re-engage God too. Shabbat Shalom.